The skyline of San Francisco glowed gold in the late afternoon sun, reflecting off the sleek glass windows of Carter Tech headquarters. From the corner office on the 42nd floor, Ethan Carter adjusted his silk tie and stared at his reflection. At 38, he had it all: an empire built from scratch, global recognition, and a high-profile engagement to Celeste Monroe, daughter of a pharmaceutical magnate. The media was already calling their upcoming wedding the event of the year. Invitations had been sent to CEOs, dignitaries, and celebrities. But the one invitation Ethan held now, embossed in golden cream, was not for the elite. It was addressed to someone from a very different part of his life, Isabel Reed. "Are you sure about this?" asked Monica, his longtime assistant, her brows furrowed with concern. "Completely," Ethan replied without hesitation. "She needs to see what I've become." 7 years ago, he had walked away from Isabel, his college sweetheart, just days after she tearfully begged him to stay. He'd chosen a lucrative opportunity in London over her pleas, convinced that love was a luxury he couldn't afford. Now, with a multi-million-dollar wedding on the horizon, Ethan wanted closure, maybe even vindication. "Have it delivered in person," he told Monica, handing her the envelope. "I want to make sure she gets it." 2 weeks later, as Ethan tasted a rare Bordeaux in his penthouse, Monica sent a short message. "Invitation delivered." She confirmed attendance. A slow smile spread across Ethan's face. He leaned back in his chair, picturing Isabel walking into the grand ballroom, seeing the life she could have had, and lost. He had no idea that fate had something far greater in store. The day of the wedding dawned bright and cloudless, the California sun casting a golden hue over the city. The grand ballroom of Horizon Bay Resort had been transformed into a spectacle of luxury: towering white orchids, a live string quartet, a tasting menu curated by a Michelin-starred chef. Everything was perfect, perfectly orchestrated, perfectly extravagant, and to Ethan, perfectly symbolic of everything he had achieved without Isabel. He stood near the marble staircase, his custom tuxedo impeccable, his expression composed. But beneath that surface ran a current of anticipation. Monica approached with her signature calm urgency. "Mr. Carter, she just arrived." Ethan's breath caught. He moved discreetly to a vantage point where he could observe the entrance. Isabel walked in wearing a navy blue dress, simple but elegant. Her chestnut hair flowed in soft waves, her expression serene. But what arrested Ethan wasn't just her presence. Flanking her on each side were two little girls. They looked about 6 years old, identical in every way. Same wavy dark hair, same delicate features. But what made Ethan's world tilt was the unmistakable birthmark on each of their right wrists. The same birthmark he had carried since birth. One of the girls tugged on Isabel's hand. "Mommy, look at all the flowers." The room around Ethan dimmed. The music blurred. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. Celeste appeared beside him, resplendent in her custom designer gown. "Darling, are you okay?" Ethan couldn't answer. Isabel had just locked eyes with him from across the room. No anger, no fear, just quiet strength. Celeste followed his gaze. "Who are those children?" Before he could respond, one of the twins stumbled slightly. Instinctively, Ethan took a step forward, but Isabel steadied the child first. "Careful, Lila," she whispered. Lila. The name hit Ethan like a freight train. It was his grandmother's name, the woman who had raised him. "Mommy, who is that man?" asked the other girl, her wide green eyes meeting his. He stepped forward. "Isabel," he said, voice dry. "Ethan," she nodded. "Congratulations on your wedding." Monica appeared at Ethan's side, recognizing the rapidly intensifying situation. "Perhaps you'd like to take this conversation somewhere more private?" Isabel nodded, whispering to the girls. A woman stepped forward, likely a caretaker, and guided the children toward the garden. Celeste clutched Ethan's arm, voice sharp. "What is going on? Who are they?" "We need to talk," Ethan replied, eyes never leaving Isabel. The grand ceremony was about to begin, but what unfolded next would change everything he thought he knew about his future. Ethan and Isabel found a quiet alcove away from the bustling foyer. His pulse thundered as he turned to face her. "How old are they?" he asked, even though a part of him already knew. 6 years and 4 months, Isabel replied, her voice calm but steady. Ethan shut his eyes briefly. The timing aligned exactly with the month he left for London. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, Ethan. For weeks before you left. I called, emailed. Monica always said you were too busy. Eventually, I understood. You didn't want to be found. Her words stung. The weight of what he had missed settled heavy on his chest. Their names? Lila and Camille. His throat tightened. Lila, like my grandmother. Isabel nodded. I thought you might appreciate that. Back in the main ballroom, Celeste paced furiously. Monica appeared, murmuring something discreetly to her before guiding her toward a private lounge. Meanwhile, Ethan made a decision. He returned to the ballroom and took the microphone intended for the wedding speeches. Guests fell silent. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice steady, I have an important announcement. The wedding is canceled. Gasps and murmurs rippled across the room. Today, I discovered something that changes everything. I've learned I have 2 daughters I never knew existed, Lila and Camille, and I cannot go forward pretending to be someone I'm not. Monica gently ushered Celeste out as she protested, tearfully demanding answers. Her father threatened lawsuits. Ethan promised to cover all costs. But my decision is final, he said. Family comes first. Later that evening, under the twinkling garden lights, Ethan stood watching Isabel and the twins from a distance. His mother, Evelyn, approached slowly. Where are my granddaughters? Ethan's lips curved into a soft smile. In the garden. They're incredible. He wasn't sure what came next, but for the first time in years, he knew exactly what mattered. The days that followed were unlike anything Ethan had ever experienced. The man who once thrived on control and precision now found himself stepping into a world governed by coloring books, bedtime routines, and unfiltered curiosity. After some discussion, Isabel agreed to let Ethan spend time with Lila and Camille, but on her terms. No extravagant gifts, no mentions of being their father, and absolutely no disruptions to their routines. Their first outing was to a local park near Isabel's modest home in Berkeley. Ethan arrived early, trading his luxury sedan for a practical SUV with booster seats he had installed the night before. He had even watched online parenting tutorials, determined to do it right. When Isabel and the girls arrived, the twins were shy. Ethan crouched to their level, offering a gentle smile. Hi, Lila. Hi, Camille. I'm Ethan. I was hoping we could hang out today. Camille peeked from behind her mother. Do you like animals? I do, he answered sincerely. Maybe we can talk about your favorites. The afternoon passed in a blur of playground swings, duck pond adventures, and ice cream smudges. Ethan learned that Lila loved dinosaurs and always asked the big questions, while Camille preferred sea creatures and liked to quietly observe before speaking. Isabel watched from a nearby bench. At first she remained guarded, but the sight of Ethan gently helping Camille tie her shoes or laughing as Lila pulled him toward the jungle gym slowly began to soften something inside her. Over the following weeks, a routine began to form. Ethan would visit the girls twice a week, sometimes helping with homework, other times just reading stories at Isabel's place. He learned that Lila disliked broccoli, Camille adored bedtime mermaid tales, and both loved dancing in pajamas to Disney soundtracks. Then one Wednesday afternoon, Isabel called him in a panic. Camille has a fever. I'm stuck in a meeting. Can you pick her up from school? Text me the address, Ethan said without hesitation. I'm already on my way. He left an executive strategy meeting mid-sentence, something the old Ethan would never have done. 20 minutes later, he was cradling a drowsy, flushed Camille in his arms. When she murmured, Daddy? While half asleep, he nearly lost his footing. That night, after giving her medicine, cooling her forehead with a damp cloth, and reading her favorite book until she dozed off, Ethan remained by her side. Isabel arrived hours later. The scene stopped her in her tracks. Ethan, asleep on the couch. Camille curled beside him. Lila tucked in nearby with a blanket over them both. She blinked away tears. You didn't have to stay the whole time, she whispered, after waking him gently. Of course I did, he replied. They needed me. In that moment, the man she once loved was no longer a ghost from the past. He was flesh and blood, present, and trying. Something was changing, not just for the twins, but for all of them. The transformation in Ethan's life became undeniable. Once consumed by mergers and market share, he now found himself prioritizing soccer games, science projects, and Sunday pancake breakfasts. The luxury penthouse no longer felt like home, so he purchased a cozy brownstone just 10 minutes from Isabel's place, complete with a small backyard and a bedroom decorated with glow-in-the-dark stars for the twins. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Isabel brought Lila and Camille over for their first visit to the new house. The twins darted from room to room, squealing with delight. "It smells like cookies in here," Lila shouted. "We made some this morning," Ethan said, smiling at Isabel, who stood in the doorway, arms crossed but amused. That day, as they all sat in the backyard eating chocolate chip cookies and sipping lemonade, the lines between past and present began to blur. The girls built a fairy house under a tree while Ethan and Isabel talked about the girls, their routines, and eventually themselves. "You've changed," Isabel said softly, watching him gently detangle Camille's hair. "I had to," Ethan replied. "I missed too much already. I don't want to miss a single thing more." There was sincerity in his voice she hadn't heard in years. That evening, after the girls had gone to sleep in their matching beds upstairs, Ethan and Isabel sat at the kitchen table. The moonlight streamed through the window, casting soft shadows across the room. "They're asking more questions," Isabel said. "Especially Lila. She wants to know why you have the same birthmark." Ethan's face grew serious. "Do you think it's time to tell them?" Isabel hesitated. "I think soon, but when we do, it has to be together." He reached across the table, not touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the warmth. "Together," the word lingered. Later that week, Ethan postponed a major corporate acquisition to attend Lila's school play. He sat in the front row with flowers, cheering as she delivered her lines with confidence. Afterward, Camille dragged him by the hand to meet her teacher. "This is my dad," she announced proudly, beaming. The teacher gave him a surprised but kind smile. "Well, it's lovely to finally meet you." As they walked to the car, Isabel caught up with him. "I didn't expect that." "Neither did I," he said, buckling Camille into her seat. "But it felt right." Isabel nodded. It did. That night, as he lay in bed thinking about Camille's glowing expression and Lila's determined recitation on stage, Ethan realized something profound. His daughters weren't just becoming part of his life. They were his life. And maybe, just maybe, Isabel was finding her place there again too. Sunday brunch at the brownstone had become a new tradition. That morning, sunlight filtered through the kitchen windows as Ethan flipped blueberry pancakes, Lila's favorite, while Camille arranged napkins shaped like origami animals. Isabel poured coffee and leaned against the counter, watching the unlikely domestic scene unfold. But beneath the surface, a gentle tension lingered. Today was the day. After discussing it for weeks and consulting with a child psychologist, Ethan and Isabel had decided it was time to tell the girls the truth. The family gathered around the table, pancakes steaming, orange juice glasses full. The usual giggles and chatter faded as Isabel placed her hands gently on the table. "Girls," she said softly, "Daddy and I have something important to share." Lila's eyes widened. Camille put down her fork. "You know how we've talked about families coming in all shapes and kinds?" Isabel continued. "Some families have two mommies, or just one parent. Ours is a little different too." Ethan cleared his throat, his voice careful but firm. "I know I've been your friend for a while now, but the truth is, I'm not just a friend. I'm your dad." A heavy silence followed. Camille looked down at her wrist, then up at Ethan. "Because of the mark?" "Yes," Ethan said, nodding. "That mark runs in our family. It's something special we share." Lila's brows furrowed. "But where were you? Why didn't you come before?" Ethan's heart clenched. Isabel reached under the table and squeezed his hand. "I didn't know about you," Ethan said honestly. "When I left for London, your mom tried to tell me, but I didn't listen. I thought work was the most important thing. I was wrong. I missed everything, and I'll always regret that. But I'm here now, and I want to be here every day going forward." Camille leaned into his side without saying a word. Lila stared at him for a long moment, then walked around the table and climbed into his lap. Her voice was small. "Can I still call you Daddy?" Ethan swallowed hard. That's all I've ever wanted. The four of them hugged in a tangle of arms and tears and quiet laughter. Outside the kitchen window, spring flowers bloomed in the backyard garden, as if echoing the new beginning unfolding inside. Later that day, Ethan's parents came over for a visit. Evelyn brought photo albums from Ethan's childhood. The girls were enthralled by pictures of Ethan as a boy, with the same messy hair and birthmark. "You look like Lila," Camille giggled. "Or maybe she looks like me," Ethan teased. As the sun set and the girls snuggled beside their grandmother to hear stories, Ethan and Isabel sat on the porch swing. A quiet peace surrounded them. "I didn't know how today would go," Isabel admitted. "I did," Ethan said, watching the warm light inside their home. "I had hope." Isabel looked at him, her eyes softer than they had been in years. "Maybe hope is enough." And for the first time in a long time, Ethan Carter felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The next few months brought a new rhythm to their lives. Weekdays filled with school drop-offs and evening story time. Weekends spent at the farmer's market, science museums, and quiet afternoons painting in the backyard. Ethan's world had shifted. The boardrooms and deadlines were still there, but they no longer ruled his identity. He had restructured Carter Tech, appointing a new COO to handle day-to-day operations, while he stepped back to focus on something more vital, being a father. One Thursday afternoon, Ethan sat in a parent-teacher conference beside Isabel. It was the first time he'd ever attended such a meeting, and he listened intently as the teacher praised the twins' kindness and curiosity. "They're brilliant girl," she said, "but more importantly, they're thoughtful. You've done a great job." Isabel glanced at him, a quiet smile playing on her lips. Later that evening, they walked hand in hand down their block while the girls rode ahead on scooters. The sky was painted in warm pastels as the sun set. "You know," Isabel said thoughtfully, "if someone had told me a year ago this would be our life, I would have laughed." Ethan chuckled. "Me too, but I've never been happier." She stopped walking and turned to him. "Do you mean that? Or are you still just trying to make up for lost time?" He met her gaze earnestly. "I mean it. You and the girls are everything to me, and I want us, to be more than just a second chance. I want it to be our forever." The next morning, Isabel opened the fridge to find a note stuck to a carton of orange juice in Ethan's familiar handwriting. "Picnic at our spot, just you, me, and a surprise." Curious, she arrived at their favorite clearing in Golden Gate Park that afternoon to find a blanket, a small basket, and Ethan waiting with the girls, both dressed in matching sundresses. Lila held out a scrapbook. "We made something for you, Mommy." Inside were drawings, photos, and sweet notes from the twins, ending with the words, "Will you marry our daddy and make us a forever family?" Isabel looked up, eyes brimming with tears. Ethan knelt beside the blanket, holding a simple sapphire ring. "Isabel Reed," he said, voice thick with emotion, "I made a lot of mistakes, but loving you was never one of them. Will you marry me?" The twins watched with wide eyes, barely containing their excitement. "Yes," Isabel whispered, pulling Ethan into an embrace as the girls erupted in joyful cheers. In that perfect moment, surrounded by trees, laughter, and the people he loved most, Ethan finally understood what it meant to build something truly lasting. Not an empire, a family. 1 year later, the backyard of their new home was alive with laughter, sunlight, and the scent of blooming jasmine. A modest white canopy stood beneath an oak tree, draped in wildflowers picked by the twins. The guests, just close friends and family, chatted quietly, awaiting the bride. Ethan stood at the altar with his best man, Michael, who whispered, "Nervous?" Ethan exhaled slowly, excited and grateful. The soft notes of a string quartet signaled the start. Lila and Camille emerged first, tossing flower petals with the precision of practiced joy. Then Isabel appeared, radiant in a simple gown that floated around her like the breeze itself. Her father walked beside her, pride in every step. As Isabel reached Ethan, their eyes met, filled with the memory of everything they'd survived and the hope of everything to come. Their vows were personal, honest, Ethan spoke first. I once thought success meant power, money, and control, but then I met you and you showed me love. And then I met Lila and Camille, and they showed me purpose. I promise to never again take for granted what really matters. Isabel's voice trembled. We didn't follow a straight path. Ours had detours and heartbreak, but those turns brought us here. I promise to continue growing with you through every chapter our family writes. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. As they kissed, the twins squealed, running into their arms, turning the quiet elegance of the moment into a whirlwind of joy. That night, after the guests had gone, after cake crumbs and paper lanterns, after Camille fell asleep with her arms wrapped around a bouquet, and Lila sleepily whispered, "This was the best day ever." Ethan and Isabel sat together on the back porch. He held her hand. You know, I never thought a wedding could be better than $1 billion deal. She leaned her head on his shoulder. That's because you've finally learned what real wealth looks like. They watched the stars come out, no longer chasing dreams in the distance, but living them, right where they were. 6 months into married life, Ethan's world looked nothing like it once had. The skyline view of San Francisco was still there, but his gaze now lingered more on the refrigerator drawings and Saturday soccer schedules than on stock tickers. One bright spring afternoon, Ethan gathered his leadership team at Carter Innovations for an announcement. He stood before a room of executives in crisp suits and sharp heels, but his voice was softer than usual. I've spent years building this company to dominate markets, he began. But lately, I've realized the most valuable legacy I can leave isn't in revenue, it's in impact. He revealed the creation of the Carter Family Foundation, an organization dedicated to providing educational scholarships for children in underserved communities and funding environmental conservation projects. Two passions inspired by his daughters. I want Lila and Camille to grow up knowing that success isn't what you keep, it's what you give. The boardroom buzzed with stunned silence. Then slowly, applause. Michael gave a knowing nod. He'd seen the transformation happen piece by piece. Later that evening, Ethan cooked dinner while Isabel graded papers at the kitchen counter. The twins were sprawled across the living room floor, building a solar system model with glitter glue and foam balls. I made Saturn with extra rings, Camille announced. Mine has a moon that's pink, Lila added proudly. As they cleaned up, Isabel asked, Are you sure you're ready to let go of so much control at the company? I'm not letting go, Ethan said, rinsing a plate. I'm making space for soccer games, for bedtime stories, for us. They tucked the girls into bed, Ethan reading the final chapter of The Little Prince while Isabel braided Camille's hair. You become responsible forever for what you've tamed, Ethan read aloud. Camille yawned. That means you're responsible for us now, Daddy. Ethan smiled, brushing her hair back. I wouldn't want it any other way. That night, as he and Isabel stood on their porch with mugs of tea, she said softly, You're becoming the man I always hoped you'd be. I think, he replied, I'm becoming the man they helped me be. The stars above them shimmered, no longer symbols of unreachable ambition, but quiet witnesses to the life they had built. A legacy not of wealth, but of love. 10 years later, the Carter house stood warm and welcoming at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, lined with oak trees and chalk-drawn sidewalks. The garden was still blooming, though now with a slightly wilder charm, and laughter still spilled out from the windows on Saturday mornings. Inside, 13-year-old Lila was setting the table with practiced precision, adjusting the napkins so they all pointed the same way. Camille, always more spontaneous, had taped a handmade sign above the kitchen archway that read, Happy Familyversary, 10 years strong. At the kitchen counter, 11-year-old Noah, Ethan and Isabel's youngest, was trying to whisk pancake batter without splattering it everywhere. Steady, bud, Ethan said, gently guiding his son's hands. You're not trying to paint the walls, Noah grinned. But they'd look good in syrup brown. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. Across the room, Isabel leaned in the doorway, watching the scene unfold with the same quiet joy she had felt a decade ago in Central Park, when everything had finally begun to fall into place. After breakfast, the family headed to the community center, where the Carter Foundation was unveiling its new library. The twins, now confident and passionate teens, were set to speak at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Ethan watched as Lila stepped up to the podium. She was poised and thoughtful, her voice steady. This library is more than shelves and books. It's a place where kids like us, who dream big, can find the tools to chase those dreams, just like our parents made sure we could. Camille followed, her speech filled with humor and heart. And if you're lucky, maybe your parents will let you eat pancakes in the reading room. The crowd laughed and applauded. Ethan looked to Isabel and reached for her hand. "I never imagined this life," he said softly. "I was so focused on what I thought success looked like. But this is everything." That evening back home, the family gathered around a fire pit in the backyard. Marshmallows roasted on skewers. A soft breeze rustled through the trees. Stars blinked quietly overhead. "Tell us again how you and Mom got back together," Noah asked, his face sticky with chocolate and curiosity. Camille giggled. "He invited her to a wedding, his own. And she showed up with us," Lila added, nudging her twin. Isabel smiled. "And that moment changed everything." Ethan put an arm around her. "Some people wait a lifetime for a second chance. I almost missed mine. But fate?" He glanced at the kids, and two little birthmarks had other plans. They all sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the fire crackling gently, the air filled with warmth that had nothing to do with flame. And as the stars wheeled quietly above their heads, Ethan knew, without doubt or hesitation, that he had lived not just one life, but two. The first built on ambition, the second built on love, and this second one was the one that would last forever.